Hey guys, Daryl back in the JCR garage. So Project Crusader and Project Mulholland are almost finished and there is no way we were using the stock shafts. So we called Adams Driveshaft out of Henderson, Nevada. These guys have been making shafts since 1996 and they're the first place I'd call if you need shafts for your project. So for your project, Adams can build anything you need. But for ours, we chose 1310 CVs all around, and they supplied all the yoke, straps, and hardware we needed to get them installed. Adams already has great installation instructions on their website, but for those of you that prefer not to read, like most of our employees here, follow along as I get these things installed.
Using a 15mm socket, remove the 4 bolts from the front pinion flange. Tap the driveshaft flange off with a dead blow or ball-peen hammer. Using a 5/16 inch socket, remove the 8 bolts from the front T-case flange. With a hammer or small punch, separate the shaft from the flange using the 3 provided punch holes around the flange. A flat chisel may help once you get enough space for it. Pull the front factory shaft out of the Jeep and throw it directly in the trash. Using a 1 1/4 socket, remove the front transfer case flange nut. Tap the flange off with a ball-peen hammer. Remove the O-ring from the factory flange and place it in the new front yoke. Then place the yoke on the front output shaft. Put a bead of RTV on the new nut along with a drop or 2 of red Loctite and then thread the nut onto the output shaft. Tighten and torque to 160 foot-pounds. Apply red Loctite to the threads of your new 5/16 inch driveshaft bolts. Slide the driveshaft into place and install these 4 bolts. The factory torque spec is 15 foot-pounds, but you'll find it impossible to fit even a small torque wrench on these bolt heads. So be sure you get these properly tight by feel with your 12-point wrench. A ratchet wrench with a small head works great here. Apply red Loctite to the 4 factory pinion flange bolts you removed earlier and install the other end of the driveshaft. Torque these bolts to 80 foot-pounds. Give it a spin and check for binding against any skid plates or exhaust pieces. Now on to the rear. Remove the 8 bolts on the rear pinion flange with a 5/16 inch socket. The use of a 3/8 to 1/4 inch socket adapter on an impact is not the smartest one, but no one has accused me of using tools properly. While you have the tool in your hand, you may as well remove the 8 bolts from the rear transfer case flange too. Now we're working efficiently. No one has ever accused me of that either. The rear T-case flange has the same handy holes for a small punch as the front, so same deal as before. The rear pinion flange has holes behind it. Access is a little tight here, so you may have to find a short punch, a small hammer, or both. Bye, worthless factory driveshaft. Use your 1 1/4 inch socket again to remove the flange nut from the rear of the transfer case. Models with the dampener installed, the big ring around the flange, will need to use a puller to remove the flange. But if you want a physics lesson, go ahead and try to hammer the flange off by hitting the dampener. Steal the O-ring out of the factory flange and place it into the new yoke. Then put the new yoke on the output shaft. Put some RTV on the new nut, a couple of drops of red Loctite, and thread it on the output shaft. Torque to 160 foot-pounds, unless you enjoy the excitement of a driveshaft coming loose on the highway. I know I do. Using your 1 1/4 socket, remove the rear pinion nut, then tap the pinion flange off with a ball-peen hammer. This is sometimes neither easy or fun, and a large hammer can be necessary. Slide the new yoke over the pinion shaft and add a bead of RTV on the washer. Put a few drops of Loctite on the new pinion nut and install. It is extremely important that you don't over-tighten this nut or crush the pinion sleeve beyond the factory setup. You are looking for the same preload as the factory yoke had before you removed it. Tightening a small amount and then checking for play in the pinion each time is the best approach. Feel free to call Adams Driveshaft directly for clarification on this step. Apply red Loctite to the threads of your new 5/16 inch driveshaft bolts. Slide the T-case end of the driveshaft into place and install these 4 bolts. Again, factory torque spec is 15 foot-pounds, but you'll need to guess at this by hand. Slide the U-joint onto the pinion yoke and install the new U-bolts. Be sure to use the provided lock washers and don't over-tighten these nuts. It's very easy to crush the caps and needle bearings with this hardware. I also like to make sure that the same amount of thread is showing behind each nut after all four are tight. That's it. Drink a victory beer or go beat on your Jeep, but preferably not in that order.
This hunk of American steel came balanced, painted, and greased, and from experience, it's the only thing that's came out of the Las Vegas area in better condition than it showed up. Man, my checkbook's still trying to recover from that trip to Las Vegas, and my liver, and my marriage. At least I still have my job, until those pictures get out.